I might have made 50 my second year. My third year, I might have made 30. Mm-hmm. Now I go into my fourth year in the NFL, I made $12,000.
Wow.
With gaining, different cars and house and all this stuff. But my fun, like, this is going here. 2012 was my worst year financially. I legit go broke while playing.
Hey guys, it's Ariel from the Work and Play podcast. If you're getting any value from this channel, and I mean anything from the tutorials to the podcast to the random videos that you see on this channel, then I just ask that you do one thing. Please subscribe. Subscribe and share this to anyone that you think this resonates with, and drop a comment below so I know what other things that you want to see next. I've gotten so many questions about this brand, and I'm super excited to share that this episode is sponsored by Black is Wealth Clothing. Now, Black is Wealth was created to inspire and empower our culture to tap into our wealth. Now, when we talk about wealth, we're not just talking about financial wealth, we're talking about the strength, resilience, and brilliance that lives inside of all of us. Now, by tapping into our wealth, we can create any form of wealth that we desire. So, if you like this shirt or any other shirt that you've seen me sport on my Instagram or any other platform, then go check them out at blackiswealth.com. I love this one, and y'all are going to love it too. Now let's get back to the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Work and Play podcast. I'm your host, Ariel Young, and we have a special edition here with Mr. Cord Parks. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing really good.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I can't even lie. I'm like getting a little nervous. I'm like, look, we're going to have a really good conversation, but you have such information to share from an entrepreneurial standpoint, a lifestyle standpoint.
Yep.
And look, you even put me on game when it comes to relationships and friendships and how everything from football is what you learned has really helped you in life in general. So without further ado, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Cord Parks. I am an Atlanta, Georgia native. I grew up here, went to Brownsville Elementary School. I might have started there, huh?
Yeah.
Brownsville Elementary School. From there, I went to Chapel Hill Middle School. I'm an East Side baby. And then went on to Stone Mountain High School, where I played football and ran track. And in the process, was blessed enough to be able to receive a full athletic scholarship to go on to play football and run track at Northeastern University. And that was really the start of my kind of journey the real start of my journey in sports was as a kid. Like, my mom was a basketball player.
Really?
I was raised by my mom and my stepfather since I was 2, but that's my dad. And they threw me in sports early. With the discipline and the certain things like that they felt, and I think at the time, that's what everybody did. They threw their kids in sports.
Mm-hmm.
To keep them from doing stuff in the streets. But we played growing up. So it was another outlet. And then started saying, you know what, I think I'm actually pretty decent at this. But a lot of that was fueled off of, even during that time, was being told I was too small. I came in with a chip on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So ended up going to Stone Mountain High School, where, like I said, I excelled. I was on the state championship track team. We won the 4x4. I started getting looks, started the recruiting process, going and visiting schools.
Were you being recruited for both, track and?
So okay. I was mainly being recruited for football, but I knew the foundation of how track helped me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious. I was like, well, hey, if I'm gonna be able to run track and do this, because I excelled at both. And I ended up choosing to go to Northeastern just due to the fact that, number one, it would be the school that would allow me to major in mechanical engineering and play football. Most people know that when it comes to being a student athlete in sports, they typically don't like for you to go after majors like that.
Right, I was going to say real degree.
Yeah, but, and that was the leading reason of me choosing to go to Northeastern. And I visited, I'm not going to say the schools, I visited a few other schools, and they were like, you don't do this and this because you cannot mess up our GPA. Because, the actual team has a GPA. You're not going to mess up our graduation rate. And they would use this thing where they would say, pay attention to my hand. Football, it's funny, they would say football first. No, I'm tripping. They would say school first, football second.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and that really, really turned my whole perspective on how important it was to choose you. And to choose things like, and I think that's very difficult, being at 18, neither one of my parents went to college. And coming to a point where a lot of us are having to choose, quote unquote, our careers for the rest of our lives. And being put in that position of going in and I'm looking at, I want to be an architect. Or do I want to be this? Do I want to be that? And I had an interest in cars, man. I love cars. And I used to, I was a tinkerer as a kid. So TVs, VCRs, whatever I can get my hands on, I'm going to unscrew
break it apart,
break it down, and in me breaking it down, I'm going to put it back together.
Yeah.
And the objective is for it to work once I put it back together. Now, I broke a few VCRs in my day.
Was your mom like, why stop breaking down my stuff?
No.
Really? She was kind of like,
she would just come home and she would be like,
my baby,
my VCRs in pieces. And I'm like, I'm going to put it back together. And I put it back together and it would work. And she would just be like, okay. But I also grew up in a family of men who work with their hands. Mm-hmm. So growing up, like, it's so funny, my grandfather would say that he would try his best to have all his, like, little housework done, cutting the grass, all that before he would come pick me up, because he knew that if he did it while I was there, I'm about to be up under the car with him. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to push the lawnmower. Mm-hmm. Like, I just was that kid.
Yeah.
And that actually helped fuel me to understand, like, okay, I'm good with my hands. I like to work with my hands. I can fix things. Yeah. So when it came to me choosing my major, I was like, me and my dad, we were looking, and I was like, well, I kind of had did research on architecture, and they were like, it was kind of like a dying thing. And I wanted to be an automotive engineer, but Northeastern didn't offer that. And then I ended up choosing mechanical engineering because mechanical engineering went across all phases of engineering, and it didn't like put you in one concentration. Okay. And then that's when I hit my first bit of adversity. I cruised through high school.
Tell me more.
I cruised through high school because I created a system. I did my working class. Mm-hmm. That way, when I got out of school, I was able to go to practice. Yeah. I could get home, I could talk on the phone and do it. Just gotta get out of work.
It's smooth sailing.
Right.
Yeah.
But in the process, it created a system for it to work in high school. But when I got to college, I didn't know how to study. Okay. And as we know, when you get to college, like, that's your first experience of, okay, we're just gonna give you the work. Yeah. It's on you.
But you get it done, you get it done.
And I ain't no doing it in class. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, this is the lecture. Yeah. So I'll never forget. I failed my first year. That's my first time I ever failed was when I got to college.
But you weren't in your core classes.
Oh yeah, I was in my core class right out the gate.
Really?
Yeah. So
you literally are taking engineering classes thinking you're gonna have the same work ethic that you had in high school, and then
I didn't know.
I know. Well, see, the thing about it is you. I'm really trying to understand your makings as a child, right? You kind of gave us a cliffhanger when it came to school first, football second, and then you said you knew that I had to do what is right for me, mm-hmm. right? So, like, what's leading, like, your knowledge at this point? Because you kind of seem like you're ahead of your time, but then,
I think just being inquisitive, I ask a lot of questions. Okay. And it's funny because I can read between the lines, but I can kind of be like, I don't really know about it. And I question a lot of things, and I go do my research. So early I understood, like, that being a student athlete is like, what can you do for me now? And once you're done, you're out. You're out of the game. It's like it's on to the next. It's a cycle. And I knew for a fact that I didn't want to pick something. Like I would hear stories of guys like, oh, I went and got a degree. A lot of my coaches and stuff, oh, I got a degree in education to be a PE coach or to do this and do that. And there's no shade to that, but a lot of them weren't doing things that they enjoyed doing. Mm. So I started paying attention to guys, some of the coaches who would come in, who were lay coaches, or who were like coaches that would come in part-time, and they would pull up and they ride their motorcycles or they doing different stuff. And I'm like, well, oh, you own this, or you do that, or you're an attorney. And it's like, So what made you choose that route versus doing that? So I started getting people around that were giving me the game, who were talking about, hey, when you go, make sure you do X, Y, and Z. Make sure you if you're able to go right into your major, go right into it. Which kind of
fell in, we learn, we make mistakes,
It fell on the other side just due to the fact that I should have, that first year, just did general studies to boost my GPA up, to get a little comfortable, to get familiar with that. Because I excelled at other classes. Like, I did criminal justice classes. I did all those. I excelled at those easily. Yeah. But I just did not know how to study.
Okay. So that was the lesson that you pulled from it. You pulled that you didn't know how to study, but this was also your first class in your major. So did this somehow taint your identity as like, okay, am I going to do this? Or did it make you challenge yourself to like step up to the plate?
It made me challenge myself to step up to the plate because that also put me at risk of not being able to play.
Okay. So you got two things that you love at the balance. Yeah. Okay.
So it's like, all right, you about to be, I'm on academic probation out the gate. Out the gate, I'm on academic probation. Yeah. And, it wasn't fun having to go to study hall while the rest of my other friends was able to, as soon as we got done, they were able to go back and do what they needed to do, right? Mm-hmm. But it showed me at that time, like, and I've always kind of been on that path where I did things which added up to my career is when I made it to the NFL, because I did, you heard the 10,000 hour rule, right? Yes. So I look back at my training and the things that I did outside of my everyday practice, how many hours I put in outside of that, it added up to about 10,000 hours. Mm-hmm. So what difference would that be as studying the same way with school and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So I just look back at those moments and I'm able to like pinpoint, and it makes sense to me as to how things develop and how they happen, and just like the whole entire scope of mentorship, being able to have people around that can pour into you, but also can guide you through this process. Like I said, I didn't have, neither one of my parents knew. Right. You know what I'm saying? We just was, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is the plan. Mm-hmm. And both of my parents lost their jobs as soon as I went out to college. Wow. So even having to face that and having to work while I was on campus. So I'm a student athlete, having to work and just barely making it.
Were you sending money back home?
I was.
You were? So you had the weirdest freshman year. Like, you literally were putting yourself into an educational strain. Mm-hmm. You're financially taking care of your parents, or chipping in, right? Yeah. And then you also are trying to build your career as a student athlete. Mm-hmm. Now, did you also have dreams of? You had dreams of becoming both as did you have dreams of going to the NFL? That's the question.
I think all kids have dreams of that while you're playing it. Okay. But the reality of it hit for me when I got to college, like, it's a possibility that this won't happen. Won't happen. I wasn't really thinking about it, honestly. I was more focused on being and just knowing to perform the best that I could at being. Mm-hmm. And as I started going through, and as I'm starting to pick up, I'm noticing like guys that I'm playing against are getting signed to the NFL. But it's still not registering me because it's just life at that point. My dad has cancer. I just trying to get the day, like each day, get through each day. Mm-hmm. And I still had the dream of it, but the business part of college sports and the stuff the experience that I went through kind of drained me from the sport. So most people know that the person that comes and recruits you, it's like dating. They put on the best representative. Mm-hmm. When you get to campus, you don't even end up liking the you don't even like the person because it's a 180 switch. Okay. It's a 180 switch, and it was not fun anymore because of how it was and how I looked at it. It's just like, man, they just riding me. Like, it's just, and then I got life going on. I got this, right. And just like, you supposed to be supporting me. You like all these things you told my parents you would do, and mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't really see any of this. But right. Understanding it now is like it's a business. They're trying to save their jobs. It's plenty of guys. You got to worry about grades, recruiting, all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I have a little grace looking back at it now because I understand the load right. that a college coach is under. Yeah. But it stripped a lot of the fun away from it for me, and I just was like, I was just focusing on let me get my degree, let me just get out of this. Yeah. And then so Northeastern is a 5-year school, which you do a middler year, which would be considered an intern, but they break it up and they put it in between maybe like a sophomore year and a junior year. So I started working I worked at Instar Gas. That was my first internship, my sophomore year.
Where is Instar Gas located?
It's in Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, Boston, Massachusetts. I was working there, and I was doing like see, a lot of the old gas lines and stuff like that were wood. So they come through, and they replace them and stuff like that. Yeah, so they would come through, and some of them are still wood or different, and they would be replacing them. So I would go through and pick an area that had this mapping system, which was like a GPS for pipes throughout the city. And I would go through and have to map it out. And if they were doing a repair on one, talk about the repair, break it down. That was my first one. Then my second one, I actually came home in 2009. That was my last year actually playing. And I had a couple workouts for a few NFL teams. And one in particular, the guy came and he was like, yeah, I really like you, it's for the St. Louis Rams at the time. He says, I'm really going to fight to get you out there. A lot of people have told me stuff. All right, bro. That's cool. Okay. But I ended up coming home for the spring semester to work for Delta Airlines. I got an internship there. And so that was my final one. And I was a 21-year-old engineering major working in I worked in a thrust reverser shop, that's what helps the plane slow down. So whenever you land and you hear that loud rumbling, what happens is these shells come out on the side of the engine, and the pilot puts the plane in full, just like if you were taking off.
That's why it feels like you literally in mid-air. Yeah. You like, hold up. That's the thrust reverser.
But actually, it's when you land.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's when you land. If you ever sit in front of the wings and you see it's a sleeve that opens up and comes back, and these little green shells are in there. What happens is these sleeves come out and they connect and reverse the airflow back out the other way.
Slow the plane down.
Slow the plane down without having to use brakes. Yeah. It's coming in at a high rate of speed, so you don't want to necessarily just use brakes. It'll burn it up.
I got you. I have a question though. So I work at Delta too, and I know Tech Ops is predominantly older white male.
I was a young 21-year-old black man over a fleet of all white mechanics.
Yes. So what is it like for you going? Like, how did that shape your identity? Like going from, you're in Boston, so I would imagine that's also predominantly white.
Yeah.
And then going into this environment, how did it shape you into a different person? Was it the older people around you, or was it being in the predominantly white? Like, what was the most impactful thing about going into that environment?
I think the first part was coming from a predominantly black area and going to a PWI.
Okay.
So that was the first experience.
Shell shock.
Right. Mm-hmm. I hadn't seen too many black, at all. And then even encountering with other blacks, it was like, what are you? Like, what do you mean by you? Like, what do you mean?
Read me and they like,
yeah, I didn't know that. I'm coming from the South. I'm like, I'm black. I'm black.
Right. And you're an engineering major.
Yeah.
Which is a very serious major, no matter what your race is.
And even with that, it was like maybe 2 of us in the classroom.
Yeah.
The rest would be Asian or white.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And coming back, I would so in retrospect of coming back to Atlanta and what it prepared me for, the one thing that gelled it was football.
That's where you created a relationship. So it didn't even feel like there was a disconnect because you knew how to have a conversation about the things that you loved anyway.
Right.
I'm curious, since you your experience in college stripped away that enjoyment, did you getting into college and having football and having conversations with people like invigorate your love for football again?
At that time?
Yeah. No, you were just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, I was a little bitter still.
Yeah.
I was a little bitter Bill for a little minute.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't even, maybe I wasn't a bitter Bill, but I was just focused on, okay, that was my last year plan. I'm coming home to see what the real world has to offer in engineering. Let me focus on that. And I'll never forget, my mom, and this is what speaks to the power of the tongue. My mom asked me at this time, she said, hey, have you been working out? And I'm like, nah, it's over with. I'm done. Let's focus on this. Let's just go ahead and get this last year of school done. I came here. I like what's going on with Delta. I'm gonna try to just, transition.
You're gonna get a full-time job?
I'm like, yeah.
Okay. Life benefits were looking appealing.
Come on. Come on. The pay well. Conversation. I'm like, okay, I can do this. So she says, I got a feeling you're gonna get a call and you're from the NFL and you're not gonna be ready. And I'm like, nah, it's done, Mom. So fast forward, I'm still in my internship and we're watching the draft and we get to the final day of the draft and I'm sitting there watching and I watched 5 people that I played against that I felt like I dominated, that I played well against, that didn't do nothing against me. I'm like, dang, I just got drafted. Dang, this person just got drafted. So bitter Bill again, I leave the house. I'm like, man, I'm not watching the draft. I'm done. I go, this is maybe 30 minutes left in the draft. I go to, they were having East Atlanta Day. I go there, I'm out there riding 4-wheelers, just having a good old grand old time. And I miss a phone call from a 314 number.
Oh my God.
I check the message and it's the guy.
Who said, I'm gonna ride for you?
He said, hey, I told you if you're still available, I'm coming back. I got one more space. We're gonna sign you. I pull over in the car and I just start shaking. I call him back. He's like, hey, I told you, he's like, I told you you're still available. You're still around. I'm surprised you're still around, but hey, we're gonna bring you in. This will be your signing bonus. And I'm like, first thing that goes in my mind, I ain't been working out.
Mama said it.
Oh. So I call her. She goes, what? I immediately drive to her house. And I get in the house and I have I'll never forget. I lean back on the door and I slide down the wall. I'm like, oh my God. I've been working out, but I ain't been doing nothing like this. And they like, oh yeah, you flying in next week.
And for context, what are other people doing? What are your peers doing during this time while you're in your internship and not even...
They're training. They're getting ready for that moment. They're legit. Some are out at different facilities in Arizona. Some are at, different places. I didn't have the money to go in. These places is $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to train just for 6 weeks.
That's how we know you're super present. You were literally... You remember I asked you, about this dream. You I'm here making the most of this present situation. That's how you could tell. You literally were in the moment. Okay, so you go to mama's house, you're like, okay, what am I going to do?
Fear kicks in.
Absolutely.
Because now I'm getting that, dang, I'm blessed with this opportunity, but I'm going to trick it out because I I ain't prepared. Then next day I start working out. I worked out for like 4 days straight. Let me tell you how God worked out. So usually on a mini camp, so a mini camp is where the team comes in, you all work out together, and you do a whole bunch of practices and things like that. So typically for a team, they do a rookie mini camp. Okay. The rookie mini camp, they're going to bring in all the rookies that they just drafted and signed, and they will fabricate another team around this group of rookies. Also other people who are trying out. Okay. So I'm going to bring in Ari. I'm going to bring in this person. I'm going to bring in this person. You're going to get a weekend just to try out. And you could possibly be signed. But we know who we're looking at already. Okay. We're looking at our core group of people. We're going to build a fake team. Okay. I don't want to say a fake team, but we're going to build a team around these people. So I got lucky because it was a new head coach. And when a new head coach comes in, they bring in the veterans too. So I didn't have to do as many reps.
Saved by the bell. And were you super sore? Like, you done worked out 4 days a week.
I wasn't super sore, but I mean, I knew I had to get what I needed to get done. But long story short, like, it worked out. I come back home. Now I'm training every day. I never forget because I went back in and I'm like, I tell the guys in the at Tech Ops, I'm like, yo, I got signed. Everybody's excited. Wow. And I'm like, yeah, I gotta leave in 2 weeks. This is right when my flight benefits kick in. So I'm like, what's up? Y'all gonna let me keep these flight benefits? They like, nah. I'm like, but damn, man, it's a good little thing. You know, it's a good little story to say. Like, nah. So,
that's funny.
Yeah, then next week I go in and I train, then I come back home. I didn't even have an agent at the time when I got signed. This was just somebody called my phone. I got an agent. I started training. I did all this stuff on my own, and then I made the team.
Can I ask you a question? How aware of your brand were you at the time?
None.
Because at this point, you're literally at the fort where Tech Ops is a wonderful career. Like, but you kind of went from, like, you were at the fort between kind of average, kind of regular person, and then to this, like, stratosphere type of career. And up until that point, you didn't necessarily know how people looked at you or how your brand was coming on.
Nah.
What would you say it was in retrospect?
College kid who went and played football.
That clearly can't be it, right? It
can't be, but that's how I saw myself then. Right. It's just, I'm doing the thing. The thing is to go, be a good student, play ball, come back and get you a job.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah. And football comes from a love.
Yes.
You loved it, right?
Yeah.
But then as soon as you got to college, life got real.
Yeah.
And it drained some of the fun from it. So during this time in your life, where were you getting, like, enjoyment, fulfillment? Where were you getting those outlets for fun?
That's a great question. I still had a core group of, like, teammates and stuff around. You know what I'm saying? And with Boston being a melting pot, it was different things we did. So, like, I was introduced to carnival. I was introduced to multicultural things where, like going to a party in Boston, you're going to hear soca. You're going to hear that first, and then you're going to get hip-hop. 10 minutes. Which is vice versa in the South. You're going to get hip-hop for the 45, and you're going to get soca for about a 5. So I had different things that I enjoyed doing, but I still had, like, my passion in cars. I still had things like that I enjoyed doing. And my job on campus, I worked for the facilities, which was repairing all of the police cars, the vans, and all that kind of stuff. So I still enjoyed that, and I still had things that I enjoyed doing. Like I bowl. I had a lot of different things and different outlets that that helped out in this process. So it wasn't just like a Debbie Downer. Like I still had a fun time in college.
Yeah, it sounds like I only asked because, like, for you to go into college and start your first year in like core classes, and also your family be going through what they were going through, from health issues to jobs, and even taking the whole like fun away from football for a moment and learning the business side of things. One would imagine you had to harden yourself, emotionally, kind of focus on what it is at the moment.
Definitely.
And I could see how that could possibly just keep you.
Definitely had to harden myself.
What would you actually say? Like, what would you say helped you uncover that, or did you actually realize it in the moment? Like,
I didn't realize it in the moment. I told you, like, I feel that I'm an enigma, and I adapt to certain things, and things ain't going around me, and I've been able to suppress certain things.
Yes, suppress is the word that I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, I was able to compartmentalize. Okay. This is going on back home, but this is going to help with what's going on back home. I actually didn't come home as much because of the finance. Like, I didn't want to be going back and forth as much, but I had a ton. Like, my family really came close and just supported and did like that. So if I needed to get back home, if it was something like that, my uncles, my aunts, all of them, like, it really was a village. Okay. It 100% was a village. Yeah. And my parents did a great job of, even when adversity struck, like, making sure the main thing stayed the main thing, which I commend them on. Because, I look at it as an adult today, and I'm like, dang, y'all was able to do this with that, and how? Like, and I don't even have kids. Like, how? So just realizing, some of the decisions and some of the things that they might have sacrificed. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. To ensure that everything didn't impact me like that. Yeah.
You said making sure the main thing is the main thing. So the first chapter is definitely do the thing, get the results, get to where you need to go. Mm-hmm. So now we're at a place where you get the call, you get sent into this whole new stratosphere, and life starts to change for you. What was the first couple of things that let you know, I'm in a whole different ball game?
I think the first thing was just to get there, and actually I would have real out of body experiences, just looking around, looking at the helmets, and it's these are I'm standing beside Mark Bowles, I'm standing beside Steven Jackson. I'm having conversations with them like normal people. You know what I'm saying? These are peers, man. These are my teammates. But I think it was their first check.
That first check.
When that first check came, I was like, oh.
This is real.
This is real.
That's interesting.
This is real.
No, you didn't know you didn't know your brand at the time before.
I still didn't know it then.
Really? How did this start? You don't know. So in hindsight, I feel like this is shaping your identity in a way. I feel like there are building blocks. The first building blocks, of course, is you said it really well, making the main thing the main thing. So your college career essentially was you focusing on the main thing, which for you it sounds like was education, and then it was school. You did what
granted, I got signed before my last year, so I didn't get my degree.
Really? You got all this information in your head. This is a whole another topic. It's funny. It reminds me of when we were
conversation. Yeah.
Okay, that's a whole other tangent. Yeah. So this is shaping your identity. We have building blocks. Literally, you got the check. You're sitting around people who are seen as some of the celebrities and big guys, and they're now your peers. Mm-hmm. This is not having any type of effect on your identity right now.
Okay, so when you say having an effect on my identity, is it you talking about from the mind, from the
did
mindset?
You start feeling yourself? Did you realize, okay, I'm in a level of success? Did you realize, okay, I can take a breather now?
No,
none of that.
Because I never felt like I had made it. Because one thing you'll understand. So it's a funny thing. We had this thing in the locker room called a Grim Reaper. So it's an individual that pretty much, when you see him standing by the door, somebody's ready to get cut. You are. Being a professional athlete, you're on an interview every day.
Okay.
Every day. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. yeah, you got your marquee player that is on the cover of everything, and you know that he's there to stay. But everybody else is expandable.
Okay.
Can be gone just like this. And I seen it. I seen guys come in, be at practice one day, come back out, they gone the next day. You're on a job every single day. I watched a guy get cut because he was on his phone in the meeting.
What?
Yeah.
So you go from making, I would say 6 or 7 figures a month, right?
No, not a month.
It wasn't a month? Okay. Okay. I've seen a couple NFL checks.
Some of them, yeah. Now some of them, but I think my rookie contract was $310,000.
Okay.
$300
for a year.
For a year. And
okay.
You take that and you divide it by 16 games.
Okay.
And that's how you can calculate.
Okay.
Man, I just gave away a whole. Yeah,
trying to understand, like it's interesting because like
and that's if you're on the active roster. It's a 53-man roster, and there are 8. It was 8 guys at the time on practice squad. I think now it's 10 or 11.
Okay.
And the practice squad, I think at that time you made $80,000.
Okay.
So you go from 300 to 80 if you on the practice squad, and I bounced up and down. So
okay.
I might have been on the practice squad for a couple, like 8-9 weeks, and then I might have been on the active roster for 2 weeks, and then they would take me back down. So it was like that.
Okay, so I can see how that keeps you real, like, cause you don't feel safe just yet. Okay, so tell us more. So you went, you're in the atmosphere, you're playing a couple games, and what was the next like?
And I think the other one that hit me too was when I came out that tunnel and heard all the people.
I can only imagine.
It was like, oh wow.
But you experienced that in college, didn't you?
Yeah, but not on that magnitude. Northeastern was not like the biggest. We played against Virginia Tech, which was 80,000 students. Crazy. Crazy.
80,000 students.
Screaming, yelling, all that.
Yeah.
But my school wasn't a big school like that, so I might have had 150 to 200 people.
Huge ego booster.
You know what I'm saying? But that never, during the game, it never really dawned upon me. Until you out there and they screaming and yelling at you. We can't even have a conversation like this because it's so loud. So I think that was another turning point for me in this process. But then here comes the ebbs and flows there. After that, I go through my first year. They go and they draft 2 guys. I get cut.
Okay.
But this is when it was brought to me how important establishing relationships are and just being a good person. Because it was a guy by the name of Art Valero, who's a coach, and he said, "Hey, you can really play at this level." He said, "If I got another job and I'm on another team and you ever get cut, call me first." So I get cut right after the draft of 2010. So I was only on the St. Louis with the Rams for 1 year. I get cut. I call Art. I said, "Hey, they just released me." He's like, "Okay, let me make a call." He already had a job in Seattle with the Seahawks. When Pete Carroll first got there, he makes a call. Boom. I might have packed my stuff, drove home. I might have got comfortable here for like a couple hours, and I was on the next plane out to go to Seattle.
Okay.
I go out there, I stick through, I bounce up and down on the active roster. Then maybe like 5 weeks into the season, I get cut again. Okay. Then I come back home again. I might spend like 4 weeks at home. Then, boom, I'm back. I'm on a plane in Minnesota. It's 2010. I'm on a plane in Minnesota. I end up sticking out the rest of the year there, all the way into the next season. I hurt my ankle. I take an injury settlement. This is when I learned the business of an agent and how important it is for representation and for them to fight for you. And I told my agent, I'm like, "Hey, this injury is like a 6 to 7 week injury. You sure you want to take a 2-week injury settlement?" And a 2-week injury settlement would have paid me my salary for only 2 weeks. Okay. But it's a lot of red tape. And he was like, "Well, yeah, the team wants to bring you back. If you do the 2 weeks, they can bring you back after 8 weeks. There's no loyalty in this business.
So you had to put yourself first.
Yeah, but we ended up taking a 2-week settlement.
Oh, okay.
Because this is what was suggested.
That's what you mean by it's no loyalty in this business.
Yeah, but it's also like representation.
Okay.
So boom, week 8 comes, I ain't heard nothing. Hey, bro, what's up? Oh, they said they're gonna. So that's when I learned protect your client. Protect your client at all costs.
Yeah.
And then I get a call from the Saints. I end up going working out for them, have a great workout. They end up choosing a young guy who ran a very fast 40 time at the time. They signed him, and then they bring me back in. Now, out of all this time, a lot of people think that I'm making a lot of money because I'm playing and you seeing me this. But now my money is depleting. Yeah. So I might have made like 110 my first year. I might have made 50 my second year. My 30, I might have made 30. Now I go into my fourth year in the NFL, I make $12,000.
Wow.
With gaining, different cars and house and all this stuff. But my fun, like, this is going here. 2012 was my worst year financially. I legit go broke while playing. I get cut before the season starts. I go and I try to play in another league. The league, I go there and I play in one game and the league folds before we even finish the game. Folds.
The league folds.
The league folds. They go bankrupt. Now I'm stuck in Vegas. Like, how am I gonna get back home? I ain't really got no money to get back home. We don't know when this check is gonna come. I was waiting for a $4,000 check, but I'm stuck in the city. And I'm like, I'm not gonna get home. By the grace of God, they fly us back out home.
Just out of like not the goodness, but like, hey, let's at
least get these boys back to their home.
That's so terrible. That's so terrible.
Yeah, and I come back home. Now my mom, I want this on again. Yeah. My mom says, "Don't you think that you should hang it up?"
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's time for you to just go get a degree, get your, do that, and just come on back to the real world. I'm like, nah, I know I can play at this level. My dad is still having health issues, but I'm like, nah, I can do this. So my other enlightening moment hits. I come back home from New Orleans because I was living there at the time, and I moved back in with my mom and dad. I got a $80,000 car in the driveway. 2 notes behind at this point. And I'll never forget, I come back, I asked my mentor at the time, who owns a couple Five Guys Burgers and Fries. I'm like, hey, I'm struggling. This was somebody who I always say, he's like, I said, I'm struggling. Like, I need some money to pay my car note. It was really my only. And he's like, you're not getting out of football what you want because you're not keeping the main thing, which becomes the second time I hear this. Because at this point, I'm trying to figure out what to invest in, what to do this. I need to do this, like, because I'm trying to figure out something. Okay. So I'm like, okay. And he's one of them people, like, with his passion, he's one of those people where it's like, he's going to give it to you and you need to go and find the message in it. He's not just going to be like, all right, you need to go do this. I go home later that day and I'm like, okay, keep it like that. I go to a friend of mine, Ernest Ross, who's a very popular trainer here. I'm like, hey, I don't have the money to pay you to train, but let me just come here and train. I know I got what it takes. He allows me to train in his gym for free, no cost. I come back home. Now I'm month 3 into, on the 3rd month when you're 90 days past it. I'm sleeping. Alarm is going crazy. My mom comes in there. She's frantic. Somebody's outside. They stealing your car. I wake up and I look out. I'm like, nah, they ain't stealing no car. I get up. I take the key out to the guy. I say, hey, man, I hit the button. I'm like, can y'all just drive it off? Just keep it up before it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I give him the key. I go back upstairs. I get right back in the bed. The freest I have ever felt.
Wow.
The freest I have ever felt. And the only reason I was keeping that car was because of status. Because I didn't want people to be like, oh, what happened to your car? Well, why you ain't, all that kind of stuff. Even for my mom, she was just like, why did you do that? Why you just didn't say this? Like, at this point, I'm like, it doesn't really matter. I locked in and I trained, and at this time, it's crazy how everything happened, because in the process of that, me coming back home, I was able to spend the last 4 months with my dad. He passed April 4th, 2013. I would legit take his car, I would go train, I would bust my butt, come back home, I would help him with his dialysis stuff. Now, my mom is even more pissed. She's like, you don't want to get a job. You don't want to do this. You just want to go train and you want to come back. And I never forget, the day that my dad passed, I signed to go play in the CFL. Like, legit. I walk in, his body is still there. I walk in right after he passed, his body is still there. I get a phone call from my agent. Hey, the BC line want to sign you. They want to sign you. They want to bring you up. This is the contract. This is the deal. And I go there and I have an all-star year my first year. Excel, do very well in the CFL. And yeah.
I feel.
And in that, I had to come back and show my mom the power of just really locking in. And once she saw it, she was like, okay, now I see. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, you're the same person who spoke life into this, but you also could have spoke death into this. But I had to legit block everything out and just focus and have tunnel vision.
Which is kind of, I feel like you were in the focus when you were in school, but maybe you just lost focus down the line. Where was your dad? Like, where was his like wisdom, or what was his point of view during this time?
I think for him, it was just never give up.
Never give up.
Yeah, it was legit never get up. And I watched him through his health battles, and I knew it was something that he really wanted to see me excel in with sports. He didn't play football. He didn't do anything, but he was always there. And it was always my reminder. And even with my mom stuff, like, I watched my mom battle health stuff. So for me, it was never give up. It was always keep pushing, find a way.
Yeah.
And that was my thing at the time.
Okay. Can I ask you, like, when the acceleration at the CFL that's literally amazing, right? Every time I want to end the movie right there, so we can just be like, yeah. But the story gets better. I'm curious though, when you got the information, the wisdom from Mr. Patrick, and he said, just let the main thing be the main thing, right? At the time you said you were investing, you were trying to figure out your money. You also, did you lose like interest in like the engineering part, or like was it investing?
It became life. It just became life at this point. I got bills to pay.
Got you. So that's what you meant by the main thing.
Yeah, like the main thing was, if football is the main thing, focus on that. That is the biggest piece of the pie that brings in the income. I think David said it at one point, or it was David or Matt. It was like, people have so many things that they don't do well. Oh, I need multiple streams of income.
Absolutely.
But these are drip drops of streams versus you have one thing that can be a big, let's focus on that, let's get that going, let's get that where it's producing and doing, and then we can start building on other things.
But the thing about your story that's unique, so yes, we read the one thing in the one meetup, but what's unique about like why you're focusing on these other things, it's like you're kind of like in survival mode.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily like, oh, I got a passion here, because it'd be different if you're like on the weekends.
I'm trying to find myself. I'm legit trying to find myself in part of a career, which I know has a life expectancy of 3 years. The average career for an NFL football player is 3 years. That's it. So when I go talk to kids, I ask them, do you think you can feed your family off of 3 years for the rest of your life? You just be honest about it, So just understanding that I was trying to prepare myself, for everything. Everybody saying, oh, you need to make sure you're doing it. You need to make sure you're doing that. But not really having that true, like, guidance of, okay, that true coach of, a life coach or something like that that's saying like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, but let's throw some order in this. Let's bring this back together. What are some of the things that you're interested in? What are some things you want to do and all that kind of stuff?
Okay. So since you focused on the one thing, you got major results from doing that. What is something that you learned about yourself as you were trying to find it? Because Well, I think that leads to kind of like where we are today, potentially. Like, how did you find yourself in that process? Now that you finally got the
that when I lock in, when I focus, I can do anything.
Okay.
Like that, when I get laser focused on something, I can do it. I can accomplish it.
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily like, okay, you know what, that makes sense. My mind is still like, oh, maybe he learned that like he would be, good at branding, or you didn't know none of that.
Because I still didn't know. It's one. You ever heard that term? You don't get the picture because you're in the frame. Mm-hmm. It's only a limited amount of people who can be in it
and understand
and still be like I had one of my. I just posted him. He just stopped playing and we started playing together. But I watched him network and do brand and stuff, and I just was like, "Bro, you're knocking this out the park." But at my time at that point, it was like, all right, well, nah, you need to focus on football. Mm-hmm. But he did it well at networking, at branding himself, at doing certain stuff. And I'm able to look back at that now. I'm like, dang, okay, this is what I should have been doing as far as the branding part of it. Because at that time, it's just like, play football, just focus on that.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, okay, if I would have had the right people around, the right coaches around, or just people who were thinking more like that, to say, all right, look, you focus on that, we're going to help you build with this and just make it a little easier for you. Yeah. It could have been.
That wishful thinking, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, some of us are made to cut down paths.
Yeah, I feel like you're a pioneer.
Some of us are made to cut down paths and turn around and say, hey, y'all come this way. I found the easier way. You know what I'm saying? And I had to talk to my auntie about that. Like, she's an entrepreneur and the thing, and I'm like, damn, I don't always want to cut the path down. Well, I always want to do that. Yeah. But if that's what you predestined to do, that's what you're gonna do. If that's the calling for you to go and cut it down and say, hey, everybody, found a way. And that's what it's gonna be. Yeah. So how long were you at the CFL? I spent 5 years there.
Oh.
So I spent 4 years in the NFL. I ended up spending 5 years playing CFL.
Okay. And then, did you at some point decide, like, have an exit strategy, or were you also
I was forced out.
You were forced?
I was forced out.
Was it age, or was it, like,
It was age, and I stood on what I wanted to be paid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I knew my value, and it was either that or take a pay cut, and I didn't feel that taking a pay cut was good. It just wasn't a good idea. Because I feel like it dropped the market value for other guys who were my age.
Wow.
Who were playing. And if you take less money, then it's going to say, oh, well, so-and-so took less money and they had better stats than you. That's when I started understanding
branding and your influence in this world.
Yep. And
did you have to, like, fight for yourself? Did you have an agent at this time, or you were?
I did, but I knew the meat and potatoes of negotiating. So a lot of those deals I negotiated myself.
Okay. That's amazing. So this is the time where you become aware of the power of your tongue and the power of your influence.
Yep.
So you decide to step down.
I didn't. I was forced down because at this point, just nobody else would sign. It just became. It becomes in sports. It becomes younger, cheaper. Mm-hmm. It legit becomes. Can we get Ari, who's coming in, who's eager to be here at 22? Can we pay her $45,000? Versus paying you $125, and we feel that we can do that. Okay, and that's why the retention rate for football. That's why the turnover rate is so high, because it's always going to be a new set of young cats coming out next year who are eager, who are hungry, who might not be as good as you, but they're going to be cheaper. Yeah, we got to keep that salary cap down, and that's when I understand the business side of it. Yeah. It's the sports business.
You recognize the business side of it in college, and now you understand it later on in the game.
Yeah.
So now that you have to figure out, you were forced out. It sounds like this is the time where you have to find a new main thing. It's no longer going to be football. Did you know this was the end for football, or were you still like, oh, God going to give me an alley-oop, I might get back into football?
I stayed training. Well, I'm 34 now. That was when I was 30, 31. I kept the dream alive for 2 more years.
Like how you said that.
I kept it alive for 2 more years. I worked out constantly and stayed ready. But it became a point where I was like, all right, this over with.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the transition like for you to find your new one thing?
Whew, child. What was it like?
Yeah.
It was hard.
I can imagine it was hard.
Difficult. Nah, it was tough just because people saw me for just football. People legit just, and I guess with my confidence and how I think, like, I was put in a place where people, I guess they said, well, he'll figure it out.
I don't want to figure it out. You tell me what I'm supposed to do.
I'm trying to tell you. And I came back home. A friend of mine was training at. So in between that, I would train athletes. So I knew that like coaching or something like that was that, but I'm just like, I need something that's going, like you say, I need something that's gonna, be sustainable. And I kept training, and then it started to, and this is when I realized how important it is to have the right core of people around. Because you be introduced to certain things, you start seeing different things, and having a mentor, having a life coach, and having individuals around who can help and can steer. Because all the guys that I've seen that have been able to transition well, they started working on this before they were headed out, but they also had people to tap into things that they enjoy doing. Okay. So I watched guys who, started, interning at ESPN or different things like that, which would transition them into being in broadcasting, being an analyst or doing stuff like that. Yeah. So I came back, I started training, I was doing that, and then Desi, who I worked with as a client, who I just was managing, he was playing football. So my boy was training him, and then I was in the gym one day, and we were sitting there talking, and he was talking about his career, and I knew at the time he had went viral a few times. And this is the Vine days. So I would always see his stuff. Got it. And I came back home, and I was like, I seen him working out of training one day. He was saying, he was like, man, I'm about to start doing stand-up. And I went and watched his show. I was like, okay. And at this time, I think he had like 400 or something thousand followers. That was a lot of followers. Yeah. In 2000, I think this was 2016, 17. Wow. And I went and watched the show. And then I started asking him questions. I was like, well, you ain't have you're not getting endorsements? Like, that's a lot of people following you. I just was being inquisitive. And he was like, some people have reached out with different stuff. And I'm like, okay. So my brain, and it's crazy because at the time, people would come to me and like, they need to shoot. Oh, go, you need to train. Oh, go talk to this person. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm a dot connector. I know I can connect it, but how do I just would keep saying it like, I need a plumber. Oh, I know such, like, so I'm like, okay. I didn't necessarily know what that was at the time. So he goes and he has a show in New Orleans. I drive down to see the show. I come back, we roll back together, and I was talking with a friend of mine who was a stylist at the time she worked with Kanye, Future, and a lot of different people styling. And I was like, hey, I got a friend, he got a lot of followers. Yo, you can get him some endorsement deals, and we sitting there having lunch. She was like, Cord, I mean, I don't really know, but she said, you sound like a manager. I'm like, what is a manager? She was like, well, it's nothing but leveraging relationships. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. I was what I'll do at manager? She was like, well, they answer emails, they do this. She starts giving me that, and I'm like, I don't sound sexy to me.
Okay.
I'm like, oh. So she's like, no, that's what it is. She was like, that's what you doing. You gonna work with this person? I'm like, nah, I'm just really trying to help him out. And, get. So she's like, nah, you really need to think about this. So I go home, I start researching. I asked him one more time. I was like, yo, so Nike, ain't nobody ever reached out there? He's like, look, I ain't got no deals. He's like, but if you feel like you can get some, go get them. I'm like, okay. So I think about it. I called her again. I said, he said, if I can get some stuff, go get them. She said, okay, well, so like, you need to get to work. So I'm like, but I don't know how to do this. She said, Cord, you answer emails, start going through your phone, looking at people that you encountered while you were playing, go through and look at some of your classmates who have, while you were playing, have moved up in different companies. I'm like, all right, cool. So I just started cold calling people. I'm like, hey, I'm working with this guy. I know influencers are new, but he has 400,000 followers. If anything comes across your desk that you're interested in, advertise. If you're interested in doing an endorsement, give me a call. Cool. Nothing. I come back to him, I'm like, I'm gonna do this, but give me 90 days. I like, just give me 90 days to start getting stuff. So I started answering emails and deals and stuff started coming through. I negotiated my first deal, I gave him a show. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Then another show started coming in. Then a couple of brands reach out. I land those deals, and then next thing you know, we 2.5 years into this, and we built the brand that you see, that he has now.
I'm all into. I'm such a I'm into the different turning points of your stories.
Oh yeah, I look at it. It's a lot of this.
Yeah, but I'm curious. Desi is in the entertainment industry, right?
Yep.
And before this woman brought this to your attention that you could be a manager, you're just utilizing your skill sets to on the cuff, just to help somebody find.
And that's what I've always done. I've always if a friend, hey, you should connect with this person. They go off and make magic.
Yeah. Do you feel like the entertainment industry allows you to stay natural, or do you find that there are other industries that you work in that just require you to work harder at that natural skill?
I think it's the second one. I think it's more so that because I see that how my mind works, with strategy, with how I can be in a room full of people and I can just sit there and listen for a minute and I'm like, oh, this is what we need to do. Or just, believing in it. I think that was the first part, was just really believing, oh, I can do this. Because sometimes you be intimidated because you're like, I don't really know. But as you start to close things and you start to really research and just start to really reverse engineer things, and then it becomes business, and you're like, okay, this is just business. Okay, cool. How do I go in? And then I started thinking. I said, well, I know how I felt when my agent didn't represent me the way I wanted it to. So I'm going to be that for my people. I'm going to stand on it. I'm going to fight it. It was some stuff that I went and closed deals on, and I know Desi looked back at me like, you are crazy. You really finna? Yes, I'm pushing for this. And when I came back with it, it was I'm like, this is it. And just being able to see how social media has just leveled the playing field when it came to so many things.
Access.
Access, also being able to find a niche in something and work it.
Okay.
And how a lot of people are not optimizing it the way they should be.
Right.
And are not making money off of it. They're just doing it. You know what I'm saying? And I think for a lot of influencers, sometimes it's fun, but then when the business part hits, it becomes I didn't really sign up for this, And having that, because they start getting approached by so many different people.
Yeah.
And I don't even like looking at it as management. I like to look at it as like I'm your business partner. Yeah. We're just going in to close the deal.
Yeah.
And I'm just a little shield right there to be able to block some of the stuff that come with it, so they don't have so much access to it. Because they know if they got access to you, they can put something in front of you and try to box you into a corner and get you to agree to doing something real quick because of who they are or what they're doing. And I'm one of those people. I just love the process. I love sitting there talking about something and then going from us talking about it to being on paper, and then on paper to be now it's being executed, and then the final product is like, wow, this was just a thought.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This was just a thought. Like on your podcast, I'm pretty sure like to see it fruition is like, hey, I'm doing this. This was just a thought a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago, a year ago. Mm-hmm. And understanding like the sports background too, it's the process. It's we're all working towards the same common goal. Which is if it's a Super Bowl, if it's a championship, we know what the mission is. We're gonna start, and it's to train, work out, do the things you need to do, but it's all for the common goal.
Yeah.
Of being on the team and working towards that. Mm-hmm. So that's how I apply my life. I call football the game of life.
Yeah. You think as the way you speak, you take a certain level of responsibility for that relationship and the sacred. What's the word? Sacredness of like allowing them to do what they do and enjoy it and have fun. And you also know the experience of having your love turn into business. Yes. So in the moment, how do you help your clients understand what they're about to embark on, as what they've done was always a passion, and now the business is like
I think that is a very, very difficult part because I just look back at it and be like, hey, certain things I remember having certain things we gotta talk about. We gotta talk about it. How we gonna move forward as a business. Yeah, I know you feel this way. I know I feel this way, but hey, they're moving like this. So let's move like this.
Okay.
You know, or just understanding like sometimes having to I used to say, let me put on my manager hat right now. Hey, this is what we need to do. All right, let me take out my brother hat. Man, look, this ain't right. Well, hey, you know what I'm saying? So learning how to balance those things for me kind of help me being able to kind of have I hate to say like a light switch.
Be able to turn it off?
Turn it off and on.
And you said you also are really good at compartmentalizing things.
Yeah. And learning just how to not take things personal. Especially in the business, because we can be when you negotiate. You know one tough thing is negotiating prices, and then come to a person being like, "Hey, that ain't enough," or "Hey, you got the," and people not feeling like, "Hey, I don't want to offend you, but I feel like this is worth this," and being able to say, "No, I can understand where you come from," and just being able to say, "You know what, this is not going to work for us. We just can't do this. We can't do business at this time. Love you as a person, but for the business part of it, it's not going to work." So just learning how to separate those things, I think, has, really like getting me, well, also too, just not making things so transactional. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like really adding value into, I'm really big on that, like add value in the things that I'm stepping into. A book that was introduced to me that has really helped me with that it's called The Go-Giver.
Love The Go-Giver.
Oh, The Go-Giver.
I feel like that was yes.
That's a game changer.
It really is.
I wish more people would read it. It's an easy read. That's one of the first books that I really read. Like I really read from front to back and was like, okay. And as it just talks about stepping into everything with the mindset of serving.
Yes. The funny thing is, when you think about, for me, I'm an individual who serves and I forget about the value on that back end. Whereas sometimes,
I've had to learn that.
I was going to ask, because for me it was freeing, but it also gives me a strategic perspective to look at serving. What did you learn in your process of serving to start? How did you learn to start thinking about the price tag and still organically add value?
I deal with that now. With not I'm like, hey, well, you only paid for this, but I'm like, I got to go hard. But also what I've been able to do better with is saying like, hey, I'm going to do this, but this is out of the scope of work.
Okay.
And this should be compensated this way. I want to do it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? But just also understanding what building relationships means. You know what I'm saying? Like, I value that, and I value it not being just so transactional. And I feel like some people will take advantage when you give more, but understanding that the right people to be put around who will know, hey, Ari, she went hard for this. And you know what? Let's get her something else, and it'll all come full circle versus it just being Ari didn't do all what she was supposed to do, so she kind of held back, and we ended up not. You know what I'm saying? Like, just giving y'all, like you said, serving, stepping into it with a mindset of serving, and let the things fall the way that they're supposed to, versus feeling some type of way of somebody. And I know that's very easy said than done, but like I said, reading the go-giver helps you to just be like, you know what, it's going to come back in some form of fashion.
Absolutely.
It is going to come back. I put it out there, it's good. My mindset was to serve. Yeah. I served that person. Did they do me right? I learn my lesson in it? Yeah, I did. All right, let's keep moving forward.
Okay. I received that. Like, you were, what's the word, ministering to me in that moment. So hopefully. But
it also, because in that moment when I told you I was trying to figure out how to turn being the dot connector into a business.
Right.
Like, I've also had to watch certain people and how they do it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, being upfront with people. Hey, look, this is my connection. Hey, I'm going to walk you through this process. Hey, connection, this is what's going on, and letting that expectation, or I don't even want to say expectation, letting it be known, hey, this is what it is. Now, and I think a lot of times as us as servers, we look back at it, we be like, dang, what was that? Y'all just went and made such. Instead, when you could have been up front and be like, hey, look, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to walk you through this process. Hey, connect. This is what it is, this is what's going on, and being transparent about it, and also showing like, hey, you wouldn't have necessarily got this. This is my connection, this is my person. You wouldn't have necessarily got this if it wasn't for me. And I hate to make it like if it wasn't for me, but it's my connection. It's my relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's something that I've been able to do too. I've learned from a few different people, just being upfront. Hey, look, this is what the deal is. And I'd be like, I can respect that. Okay. Cool. You know what I'm saying? Cool. Yeah. Versus like, sometimes, we'll sit back and say, let me see what this person gonna do. Let me see if they're gonna throw an alley back to me.
Right. Like, no, you have to be more intentional.
Just go ahead and just go and put it out there. Look, this is what I'm expecting. This is what I'm looking for from this.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable with that? Okay, cool. Let's move forward.
Okay. When you look back at old times, when you were just serving and you're like, oh, they did a whole connection and I wasn't even included. How do you stay settled in yourself?
You know that's a process.
I'm trying. What is your process to stay?
I'm in therapy. I'm recovering. Cause I used to look at that job and be like, I know you did. The nerve. I just gave you a whole idea. You weren't even thinking about that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
You gonna really just go, dang, okay. And then now you can put this person in the box when they had no clue. They might have had no idea that that's how this works. Okay. Or, I try to have grace in saying that people don't know. I try not to assume that a person knows how to conduct themselves in certain things. Okay. I really had to learn it. I hate when people say you should know. How?
Yeah. How
should you know if you've never been in this atmosphere? You know what I'm saying? Like my mentee came with me yesterday to a podcast taken for 85 South. And I've been telling him, I was like, hey, when you go in these rooms, introduce yourself, make connections, make sure that these people know you and then let them know that you're with me. So that if you bump into them somewhere else, they remember you, they know you. Then you can throw that, hey, I was with Cord, such and such, such and such. And it's funny because he met somebody. I was like, did you introduce yourself? I said, did you know who that person was? Oh, should I go back in? I said, it's too late now. I said, I'll set it up. I said, but like, but also, he was like, his previous mentor was like, when you come into place with me, you don't say nothing. You just be quiet. So now I understand the trauma that he's experienced from that. Now he's in the room and he's sitting with me and he's just like, and I'm like, nah, that's not, I don't want that from you.
Yeah.
Get in here, mix, mingle, talk to people. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Do that. Mm-hmm. And I see how that trauma can be something that's like, can put you in a space of like, kind of second guessing, like, should I talk? And I'm telling him, I'm just reminding him, like, hey, when we go in here, wait, talk to people, introduce yourself. Don't just stand around me at work, you know what I'm saying? And make yourself known versus trying to, and I never understood how a person could do that. Just be like, oh, now you get in here, don't say nothing. That's ego.
Yeah, it is absolute ego.
It's ego.
In the vein of mentorship, another thing that I was super intrigued about is your participation in the Black Wall Street and going into schools and helping young people, realize their full potential and also be interested in being something more. Is it specifically entrepreneurship focused, or is it just be all you can be?
I think it's just really, for me, it's just be all you can be.
Okay.
Because at the time, I didn't look at being an athlete until I started realizing that I'm just an independent contractor. I'm really an independent contractor. I work for myself. I'm in a competition with this person. I get the job. It's my contract. It's this, is that. And I started connecting the dots. Like, oh, really, I am an entrepreneur in a sense. Like when you said, I got my own brand. I got certain things that I can be building on. I don't necessarily have to just put all my eggs in this. I can be expanding myself out and doing this and doing that. So I think for me, it was just going into the schools and from a professional athlete perspective, being honest about taxes, being honest about financial advice, being honest about my experience, and it not being this fluff of, oh, you go to the NFL and you go do this and you go do that. Just like being real transparent with my process, what I experienced, but also learning along the way, like, okay, well, yeah, I am an entrepreneur. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
This is how these two things tie together and all that kind of stuff. But just for me, I think for me, it was just really being able to know that I can connect back with students and being able to connect with the youth in whatever way I could. Yeah. And realizing like that it wasn't people that looked like me. Not necessarily people that look like me, but there weren't many professional football players coming back giving the information or doing certain things and making themselves tangible for us to really be able to get, like, think about to bump into a David Shannon, to bump into an Ari, to bump into a Maddie J in the streets. Like, it was not like that. Yeah. They look like rock stars to these kids now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
untouchable.
Yeah, but now it's like, it's right there. You know what I'm saying? You can be driving down the street and see a car with CEO manager on the side, and it's 9 times out of 10 he's gonna walk out and he's gonna have a conversation with you. And just realizing how, like, that connection is so strong, and they're gonna be the ones who take care of us. I know I want to be taken care of. You know what I'm saying? They remember. You remember the people who came in and had an impact on you. As a kid. Yeah. Like, I work with a teacher influencer. Like, I got a client who, Alfred Shippey Brooks, who is an educator in Clayton County, who I helped grow from 5,000 followers to now he has 50,000 followers. And he's an econ teacher. You know what I'm saying? One of the first brothers I knew going live, using social media to connect with his kids in a way where, okay, you can't make it to class today? Ain't no reason. I go live every day.
What?
I go live every day.
Meeting the kids where they are?
Exactly. Allowing kids to turn their homework assignments to Instagram.
What? That's innovative. So,
connecting with people like that, who understand the power of things and who are not just like, oh, no, I'm not finna do this, and like, and actually able to bring him as an educator out into a space in the entertainment world, but not really, but just as an influencer and able to triple his salary as an educator. And educators really being the influencers. They're with kids every single day. You know what I'm saying? So his innovation and just how he's been connected. Like, I've watched how he can make a room, you know, and producing a virtual conference that sold 6,000 tickets for an educator. You know what I'm saying? For an educator to be able to pay out his peers who are presenters, like, nice checks.
That's amazing.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and able to see these different things that to us growing up wasn't considered to be cool. You know what I'm saying? And really put a spin on it and say, you know, you can be an entrepreneur, you can drive a Lambo, you can do this, you can do that, you know, or you can come into a school and be able to be dressed like this. You know what I'm saying? And not have to come in with a tie. Yeah. And being able to connect or have an adult pair of shoes on that connects with a kid to be able to get this kid, I call it get him in the car. Because once I get you in the car with me, I can take you wherever. You know what I'm saying? I can take you to whatever destination. But I got to have that conversation that's going to connect with you first. So if it's my shoes, let it be the shoes. And I started to learn that during Black Wall Street. We all walked in looking a certain type of way. We all had on dope kicks. We all had on our different stuff. We all walked, talked, and we looked like you. You know what I'm saying? So now you don't feel like, oh, this person is talking down on me. Yeah. We're meeting you where you're at. So being able to see that, you know, that educators are the new influencers.
That's a fact.
And we all are educating in some way, some form of fashion.
Absolutely. But when you like, specifically educators are definitely, they have the power.
They have the power.
At the granular level, especially when we think about systematic change, they're the people in the space. And for someone like your client to be able to use that power and leverage it instead of kind of go through the daily rigmarole.
How cool is it to walk in and say, my teacher has 50,000 followers?
Literally, like right here. Right. And that is everything that kids look up to. That's status. Like, oh, my mom tells me to eat my vegetables, but if my teacher who has $50,000 tells me to eat my vegetables, I'm doing it. Like,
you know what I'm saying? Imagine my teacher putting up driving a Tesla.
Oh my God.
You know what I'm saying? Like the connection that, oh, Mr. Bruce got a Tesla. Yeah. Oh, Mr. Bruce come in wearing these. Yeah. Like he's able to connect with them in a way where they're like, and they come and they demand, like, it's a demand of respect from back and forth, and he respects the kids in that way. And like you say, to be an econ teacher and to really help kids to connect the way he's been able to do something and connect with has been awesome.
Yeah. There's something you said about mentorship that I really want to bring light to. When you talk about the mentorship with kids, I hear it. Like, I can hear the passion, and I can hear the fact that you're able to go into the room and really truly connect with the person as a child, and not be, what you said was, it was something of the effect of like demeaning, right? Not to be demeaning.
Talking down. Yeah.
Talking down. That's specifically what you said. You also lead that way in your mentorship, and I can only imagine your mentee is at least an adult of some sort.
Yeah, he just graduated from Georgia State.
Okay. So how do you have a philosophy on mentorship? Like, it sounds like you have a philosophy on mentorship, whether they're old or young, because it can be a bit challenging to find someone who's willing to pour into you as an adult.
I don't know if I have a philosophy. I think something else that I've noticed about kids, or just in general, is people want to talk about themselves. And a lot of times when you go into schools, kids don't get the opportunity to talk. Adults just talk. You gotta do this, you gotta do that. I'm going to ask questions. Hey, come up here and show me what you think this is about. Or, hey, you saw the Travis Scott set. What did you thought about it? What did you think when you saw that? And I love to hear perspective. So I kind of use the therapist approach. I think that's kind of what it is.
I like it.
I kind of use that. You know how a therapist guy, they don't, it's a misconception that you go in there and you can lay on the couch and they can tell you what to do. They actually just guide you through the conversation, and you end up answering it along the way, and it's all on your perspective. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny because me and my homeboy, shout out to Alson. He's an influencer, he's a comedian, he's a GOAT, and he's been an intricate part in like helping me and stuff like that. We went to high school together. But we both go back to our high school all the time. And we did this one thing where we went and spoke to I think it was a business entrepreneur class. And one of the girls, she was like, yeah, I asked the question of why do y'all feel that, you can't connect with your parents and why you can't. And the girl, she was like, I mean, y'all just don't listen. And I'm like, interesting. Mm-hmm. And then she ended up saying something and my homie was like, see, that's the problem. And I was like, bingo. And she was like, that's the example right there.
Don't listen.
She was like, you didn't give me a chance to even express my perspective of what I saw, how I saw it from my lens. And a lot of times people just want you to listen. Yeah. And I think that's a key component of, we talk about talking in communication, but we don't talk about listening to understand. A lot of people listen to respond. And a lot of times being able to go in, and that's something that I've always admired about David when I would watch him talk to the kids. Like he would ask questions, even with his podcast. He be knowing the answer to a lot of stuff, but he asked it in a way where you be like, man, I know you know this, but the way you just asked me, bro, let me tell you what just happened. You know what I'm saying? And I've watched how he's just very inquisitive. So I took that approach with kids or just having conversations in general with people. Just like, well, why do you think like that? I can completely disagree with somebody and sit there and have a conversation and be like, well, what made you think? I just want to know. Just tell me, just walk me down what makes you think that way. Mm-hmm. And I can see how you can think that way versus being like, nah, that ain't right because I see it this way. And blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I use that approach when it comes to kids and just mentoring in general because it's something to learn from everybody. Mm-hmm. Even a little kid, it's something to learn. Yeah. And that's just how I approach it.
Yeah. I can tell. Yeah, absolutely. So now you know your philosophy.
Right. Yeah.
Your framework.
Yeah.
That's dope. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the couch.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I have received a lot. And even in this conversation, there's certain, like, everything tells us that we are where we're supposed to be in this life. And your story helps you remember to like stay present, stay focused on the main thing. And regardless if you became the person to cut down the hedges and figure it out, that was the position that God wanted you to be in for you to learn from being present. And
embracing it.
Yeah.
Embracing it, and really have an appreciation for that. Because all of us are not able to understand the position that we hold and why we're there in that moment, but also being able to go back and just view it and say, this makes sense. Why I went through this to experience this to be able to talk with you about that. And it all comes full circle. We don't always understand when we're in it, but when you come out, you're really able to look back at it. And sometimes the more in tune and the more you tap into yourself, you understand it while you're in it too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I typically will ask this question, and I know you're gonna have something wise to say for the listeners who, one, they have aspirations of like building themselves up, mm-hmm. especially nowadays. This day and age, it's like building their Instagram followers so that they can either build their business or they can do whatever. But I also find that there's value in you now knowing in retrospect what your life story means. Mm-hmm. So as we close up, it's more like if you can think about a word of wisdom for a person to be able to tap into their greatness. What would your feedback be to them, and what would you say that they can do right now to capitalize on their moment, even if they don't recognize what's going to happen at the end?
It's one word that comes to mind: jump. Jump. I mean, we come up with great ideas. We come up with these things, and sometimes we get to the edge and we figure out every reason why not to do it. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm not qualified. We talk ourselves right off the ledge. When in actuality, you just need to jump out there. Jump out there on faith, and you'll be surprised at the things that you're able to accomplish once you just jump through it. Is somebody right now sitting there worried about, well, what do I got to do to start a podcast? Pull out your phone and just start recording. Take one step, and you can take another step. It doesn't have to be all put together and all figured out. There's nothing wrong with learning along the way. I stepped into my situation with Desi and I learned along the way. Same thing with I learned along the way. You are not going to go through this process perfect. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. And all of those things are going to prepare you for the next thing.
Thank you. I'll say thank you because not only thank you for you, but I thank God for your journey, because I think that's what keeps you humble and that's what keeps you like really focused on the main thing, which doesn't allow you to get too caught up in your brand, even though I'm sure you know your brand now. And now you understand the impact that you have on very many people, whether you know it or not. Just the way you move, the power of the tongue, your presence definitely has an impact on all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it for pouring that back into me.
Look.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank y'all so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching me. Until next time, peace out.
Peace out.